Hi and welcome back to the channel after a fairly lengthy break of a few months while we got rid of the festive season and into the new year, and now we're all charged up again, ready to go with a rather special film, which isn't one of mine actually, but it was given to me by Sid Hurstwood of the Op Mole many years ago. He just handed me this enormous reel of 16mm celluloid film, which he said he wanted somebody to look after. This was in the Peak District Museum, and accompanied an enormous box which contained the projector. So I got the full package. From then on, I watched the film, obviously mended it a bit. It was particularly the beginning part of it was in tatters. So I got another piece of film and spliced it on and so on to eventually produce this DVD. And this is what we're about to show you on this channel now. The film itself is titled The Underground Journey, and depicts a journey which was possible when the miners were at work underneath Cromford Moor, going in at Mere Brook, Sough, and coming out at Cromford, Sough. It was filmed it was originally filmed as part of a project for the Water Board, who were concerned about the stability of Mere Brook, Sough, and they got permission to go into the Sough and correct one or two collapses and make the whole thing so that the water flowed much more freely through the Sough. And having got this footage, which they considered, which were very, very good pictures at the time, because they were filmed on the 16mm celluloid film with I think car headlights as the only source of lighting, and very damp conditions, as you can imagine. But they got some really good footage, so much so that they thought it would be nice to make it into a film, a proper film with a commentary and everything. And I think they got the BBC interested in it at one time, who unfortunately dropped it when some of the directors said that, well, it's not colour, it was black and white, and they were just going over to having everything in colour, so it was dropped. But it was quite a professional thing with a proper commentary and music from the BBC Sound Workshop and so forth. But anyway, having inherited this thing, this goodie, I had to set about putting it onto a DVD, and as I said before, tidying it up and repairing the tape and so on. I did show there was one film show that I did of the 16mm film at the Peak District Mines Museum. I thought it was amazing that it actually survived long enough to show the whole film without interruption. So it was a good evening, that. Anyway, what can I say really about this thing? It's a remarkable film, and it is nice to think that it's going to a wider audience. We used to show it, or I used to show it every year at one time at the Cromford Fair, Cromford Festival, was it? Yeah, they used to have a festival every year, and I showed it there several times, and always to packed houses, so there's quite an interest in this. However, I hope you enjoy it, and it's good to be back, and roll the film.
Awesome.
Mere Brook Low is 6 miles wide, and Black Rock, its northern peak, has stared across the valley since it was an inland sea. Until 2,000 years ago, the hill's great wealth of lead lay deep and undisturbed, but with the advent of the Romans, the plundering began. Today, the hill is honeycombed with idle mines and crumbling shafts, a warren of exhausted rakes and vanes. only the Soughs continued their never-ending struggle against the silent rising flood. For 5 or 6 years, the Opwell Group, a mines research unit, devoted all its spare time to an intensive survey of the interior of Merebrook Low and of the Soughs and mine shafts linking it to the outside world. Amongst the innumerable shafts explored by the group was Slater's Garden shaft, which, like so very many others, was difficult to find. Long disuse had ensured that the Rail and Rock's capping had become so overgrown that the shaft's existence, let alone its exact location, was in doubt. This shaft was only 130 feet deep and could therefore be laddered. It was hoped to prove that it dropped into Longhead Sough about a mile above the Sough tail, that is, about a mile into the hill. Already, Dougie Nash, the team's leader, was working on the theory that there might be an underground route right through the whole length of the hill, if only enough Soughs were passable, and these could be linked by different mine workings or by natural rifts or caverns. In this instance, the first to descend was Nash himself, later to report that the shaft was in quite good order and the Sough, though silting up, was not completely blocked. Months previously, Conway Sough, at the south end of Merebrook Low, had been chosen as the front door into the hill. After the descent of Slater's Garden shaft, it was felt that Longhead Sough could well provide the back door to the hill. Between these two, Nash drafted a route using parts of 2 further Soughs, Wheelgate and Dovegang, linking the whole together with 3 lots of mine workings, of which only the southernmost had then been fully explored. It was clear that a great deal more preparatory work was necessary. For instance, although Longhead Sough was just passable a mile upstream, as Slater's Garden shaft had shown, silting mud had practically closed the back door, and Colin Wetton had to be sent in at the Sough tail to see if dredging were necessary. Colin reported that the mud was too deep and ran too far in to make digging or dredging worthwhile. It was, however, still quite possible to crawl through, as the headroom hardly ever fell much below 12 inches, and accordingly this somewhat unglamorous arch was accepted as the finishing point of what later became quite a memorable journey. The search for a route for the northernmost inter-Sough stage between Longhead and Dovegang Soughs was conducted from 2 bases. From Slater's Garden shaft and the Longhead Sough, the team moved southwards exploring the Slinter and the Seven Rakes mines, and finally found a way to the northern side of Ratchwood Lake. From Godbehere shaft and the Dovegang Sough, a persistent and methodical search northwards finally disclosed a route through the Ranta mine workings and thence to the Ratchwood pipe caverns, and so down to the southern side of Ratchwood Lake. Godbehere shaft drops 410 feet to the level of Dovegang Sough, and all descents were winched. Johnny Oakley, the unit's engineer and equipment officer, designed and made the 3 legs and the winch, and modified the equipment caravan. Solid and dependable, Johnny also operated the winch himself. There was little room for error when lowering into a flooded shaft, especially when the depth of water at the bottom varied according to some mysterious subterranean process of its own. At Godbehere, it was Colin Wetton who led the way. Fit, agile and experienced, confident that Johnny Oakley would stop him accurately at the water level, Colin regarded this descent as pure routine. By the time explorations from the foot of Godbehere shaft had been completed, it had become a headquarters. The team had installed a telephone to the surface and had rigged up some fixed ladders to the levels immediately above. And Dovegang Sough had been traversed throughout its usable length, but its tendency to harbour methane gas had discouraged detailed examination, at least without a safety lamp. Along with Colin, the most frequent visitor to Godbehere was David Epton. David and Colin, both of an age and much younger than the rest of the unit, were the team's shock-feed anxious to tackle any crawl or climb, however difficult or unpromising. Practically tireless and apparently quite indestructible. Of all the shafts used by the group, the Great Rift shaft was probably the deepest. Certainly it was quite the most spectacular. Dropping 550 feet through the open rift to the half-arch level used by the team, the shaft itself plunged on a great deal deeper. The rift, worked clean by generations of old miners, sometimes wide, sometimes a mere crevice, runs for miles across the county's northern heights, and just over one of those miles sufficed to provide the central link between the Wheelgate and the Dovegang Soughs. final route, as mapped by Dougie Nash, was tortuous and difficult, and 9 miles long instead of 6. At least half was through mud and water of various depths, and the remainder often scrambles, crawls or climbs. Once the route was fixed, the team began to wonder if, as a climax to months of patient exploration, they could make the entire journey in a single day. Dougie Nash estimated the required time as 12 to 14 hours, given good luck and navigation, and an all-out attack was organised. Although no overnight stop below ground was intended, thus minimising the equipment to be taken, there was still a lot of planning to be done. Lights had to be prepared and batteries charged, and a boat fitted up to carry them. Telephones and winches had to be manned at Great Rift and Godbehere shaft heads in case of emergency. An inflatable raft was obtained to carry ropes, first aid kits, a compass and davy lamp, and all personal gear, exposure suits and cap lamps, etc. underwent a rigorous inspection. And so, one Sunday morning at 7:30, the team went into Marebrook Low by its front door, the Conway Sough. Conway Sough was the largest, the safest and the easiest of the 4 soughs. The volume of water was considerable, 18 million gallons per day at the Sough tail, but the rate of flow was only moderate. Nevertheless, wading waist deep or more and pushing the canoe and raft upstream made every step an effort, and the 1.25 miles the team had to cover took an hour and 45 minutes. The condition of the Sough was a tribute to the French prisoners of war and others who spent 50 years in building it. Begun in 1772, the Sough and all its branches ran to a total length of 11 miles and drained a tremendous complex of mines. Because of the conditions which obtained in the first inter-Sough stage, the canoe carrying the heavy batteries had to be left behind at Conway Sough, and the raft deflated and its contents spread between the team. The deflated raft itself was also carried on because the team leader was a non-swimmer and would therefore need it later on when crossing Ratchwood Lake. The route was very wet and muddy in the lower sections, and this and some awkward passages made for heavy going. The team's first break of 30 minutes was scheduled to be taken on arrival at Wheelgate Sough, partly to recover from their efforts up to then, but mainly to gird themselves up for the very much harder work in the turbulent Sough ahead. By 10:45 the team were entering Wheelgate Sough, a quarter of their journey done, but with the easy 2.5 miles behind them and 6.5 miles of trouble still ahead. Wheelgate was by far the fastest flowing Sough the unit ever met in all their years below ground, and the crashing of its water in so confined a space was positively deafening. Loose rocks fell in from roof and walls, and progress was very slow and hazardous. The raft was an early casualty, only the Davy lamp and one rope being saved. Strong man Johnny Oakley led the attack, and after a 3-hour non-stop battle the team finally, and most thankfully, climbed out into the great rift itself, triumphant but exhausted. By 2:15 p.m, rested, relieved and refuelled on raisins, glucose and chocolate, the team were on their way through the Great Rift. Climbing down winzes whose wooden stemples were fixed by long-dead miners, passing under century-old rock packs and stoping, squeezing through crossed joints and heading joints, everything was going well, and the message, OK so far, was telephoned to the surface up the Great Rift shaft. Taking over from David Epton, Colin Wetton led through the second half of the Great Rift. In this section the connected workings were quite numerous and included the Goodluck, Jackson and Venturgate mines. By 3:30 p.m. the team reached the start of Dovegang Sough, which they regarded as being the halfway point of the whole journey. The flow of water in this sough was barely perceptible, earning it the title of the Quiet Sough. Quiet and insidious too was the danger, for intermittent pockets of methane gas lurked throughout the sough, unseen, odourless, but potentially deadly. Worst affected was Colin Wetton, but all the team experienced the usual breathing difficulties, headaches and pounding hearts. Dovegang Sough was constructed mainly in the 16th century, although there were various branches and extensions added later on. With the passage of 400 years, it is not surprising that some of these branches have completely silted up. The one inspected had a bare inch or so of clearance between the water level and the roof. Generally speaking, the condition of roof and walls was better than in the much younger Wheelgate Sough, where the ravages of time were aided by the violence of the rushing water. In spite of the gas and occasional silting, good progress was made in the almost still water, and by 4:45 the group had covered 1,500 yards and were turning off up the short lead to the foot of Godberhere Shaft. As the team were slightly behind schedule, and the loss of the raft in Wheelgate Sough would perhaps further delay matters at Ratchwood Lake, it was agreed that a short conference should be held at the foot of Godberhere Shaft. There it was decided that the lake could be swum by everybody except the team leader, who could be roped across, and the decision to go on with a revised estimated time for the completion of the whole journey was phoned to the waiting support team at the surface. From the map, Nash estimated that there were 3 3/8 miles still to cover, of which over half would be comparatively easy going especially through the caverns. Whilst the rest conferred, the tireless David Epton insisted on exploring a possible shortcut to the caverns through a crawl opening off the nearby but flooded Bluebell engine shaft. As the crawl was blocked inside, David had to make the dangerous unroped traverse of the crumbling walls in both directions, above no less than 60 feet of water. It was perhaps as well that David's shortcut didn't go, because the saving in distance would surely have been nullified by the slow traverse of the water and the even slower rate of progress in the crawl. Refreshed by the half-hour tea break, Dougie Nash led off up the fixed ladder in Godbehere shaft to the next higher level, and thence along a series of catwalks under rock packs and stopings into the Ratchwood pipe caverns, long worked out by miners some 3 centuries ago. The only time the team encountered another passerby was in the middle cavern. David Epton led the way down into the last cavern, and so to the edge of the lake itself, 35 to 40 yards across, and varying from 8 to 30 feet in depth. By a majority of 3 to 1, David had been elected to make the first swim over, towing the rope which Dougie Nash would later use as lifeline. And Johnny Oakley was the anchor man, leaving Colin Wetton to swim over number 3. David had established himself on the northern side of Ratchwood Lake, the signal was given for Dougie Nash to make his crossing, while the rest stood by to help if necessary. Fortunately, the lifeline and the buoyancy imparted by the air in his exposure suit ensured a trouble-free trip, although by this time the team leader, older than the others and carrying more responsibility, was obviously tiring. Somewhat restored by the rest at the lake while the second pair came across, Dougie Nash led off on the penultimate stage, through parts of the long disused Seven Rakes mine and the Slinter mine, towards Longhead South and the journey's end. In the very tiring Longhead Sough, however, Dougie Nash had reluctantly to concede the lead to David Epton. Nash, as team leader and chief instigator of the journey, had hoped to be the first to emerge from the opposite end of the hill, but fatigue and the previously underestimated difficulties of the Sough combined against him. It had been feared that the final mile would be extremely arduous. Slater's garden shaft was left laddered as an escape route if required, but to the weary team it was even worse than expected. This was the oldest Sough of all, and some deterioration of roof and walls was inevitable, but the depth of mud was worse than Colin Wetton's original tests had indicated, and the water temperature was at least 10 degrees lower than in the slightly thermal Conway Sough. As the waiting friends and members of the support team saw, however, the first man out, after all, was cameraman and fifth member of the team, Doug Fern, who filmed the entire expedition. Second to surface was David Epton. Relief and a sense of achievement overcoming any signs of tiredness. Probably no one in the group was more glad to see the final arch than Dougie Nash, only with difficulty keeping his head above water in the last appalling crawl. As soon as Nash was on his feet, David Epton was eager to discuss a return or some other journey, but the team leader's reply was not recorded. And Colin Wetton was fourth man out, and the last to emerge was Johnny Oakley, anchor man and deputy group leader, in an overall time of 15 hours and 40 minutes, a record which may very well stand for quite some time.